Well, the world faces a fair degree of volatility that's reforging industry across sectors and spaces and redefining boundaries, be it in automation, robotics, or augmented reality and artificial intelligence. And at the core of the transformation lies not just technology, but technology that's designed to drive innovation while enhancing productivity and furthering sustainability through automation. Solving for this growing need is Rockwell Automation and its army of 29,000 people who deliver tech-driven automation solutions to power the digital revolution for clients spread across over 100 countries, bringing about the next generation in smart manufacturing. On this edition of CNBC-TV18's Global Dialogues, I'm speaking with Blake Moret, the chairman and CEO of Rockwell Automation. Blake joined Rockwell Automation in 1985 as a sales trainee, and after holding several leadership positions in varied business areas, he became CEO in 2016 and was elected chairman of the board in 2018. Blake, always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us, and it's great to have you back in India the first time post the pandemic.
It's great to be back. Thank you.
So let's talk about India, Blake. You're here to inaugurate your Chennai facility, which is going to be in addition to the one that you already have in Pune. A, the big picture on India, and then B, we'll talk about Chennai.
So India has more Rockwell employees than any country in the world outside of the U.S. We do software development, now manufacturing, and it's just a great platform, not only for resources for the world, but also to be able to better serve the Indian market in its own right.
So this new facility in Chennai, what is that going to deliver on?
So the products in the facility in Chennai are primarily focused on the semiconductor industry, but this is just the first phase. I expect there to be more developments to come.
And you will be operationalizing the facility early 2025?
That's correct. It's on a fast track.
Well, you talked about semiconductors, and I was wondering if you have a view on what the government is attempting to do on the semiconductor side. They've got this big Semiconductor Mission. It's pretty much like what the U.S. is trying to do with the semiconductor industry back home. Of course, the quantum of the subsidies on offer very, very different. But when you see the CHIPS Act and what you see India doing here on the semiconductor side, what does that tell you?
Well, first of all, I think the supply chain shortages of the last couple of years showed us just how critical semiconductors are in everything that we do, and indeed for our quality of life. It's a multi-year vision. I think it's a bold vision that the Indian government has, not only to create the fabs, but also the ecosystem. And all of that coming together is going to be a multi-year journey, really important for resiliency in the manufacturing economy.
So, from a global perspective, and you talked about what India is delivering at this point in time for Rockwell globally, how has that changed over the years, and how has India's significance changed for Rockwell over the years as well?
So I think we started with a modest footprint with respect to Global Engineering Center, and while it's not a new concept for Rockwell, we've rapidly scaled. In fact, we have double the number of employees that we had at the start of 2020. And we're not done. Continuing to mature in that respect and really offering services for our global businesses throughout all phases of product development, application engineering, and post-sales support.
Patents being filed here in India as well?
Yes.
And do you see that as something that you will continue to build momentum on?
We absolutely will. We expect that.
Let's talk about the global environment. And as I started by saying, it is volatile and it continues to be fairly challenging depending which market you operate in. Let's start with the U.S. The economy has been resilient. There's been a lot of talk around recession, but we haven't seen one. And now with the Fed likely to cut rates sooner than what most people were expecting. How do you see things turning around as far as the U.S. is concerned, specifically on the manufacturing side?
I think as long as unemployment remains relatively low, in the low 4% range, people are going to continue to live their lives. There's going to continue to be a suitable amount of consumer demand, which will continue to drive that economy. Certainly, lower interest rates are going to help convince manufacturers that the time is now for investments to be able to have a lower cost of money. But there will also be vertical specific dynamics. So as we've talked about, automotive, taking a little bit of pause in the velocity of the electric vehicle build out, but there continues to be investment in other aspects of the manufacturing process for automotives, including the tier suppliers, food and beverage, life sciences, the energy transition, warehouse automation across multiple verticals. I think these are all vertical segments of manufacturing that do hold promise for the next couple of years.
I'll start by talking to you about automotive and specifically what we're seeing happen on the EV side. And you called it a pause. Why do you believe it's a pause and it's not sort of undoing of the kind of gains that we've seen for the EV side? Because a lot of the global OEMs are either putting their plans on new launches, etc., on hold, and there is a fair amount of uncertainty on what that's going to mean in terms of future investments with the subsidies sort of being phased out.
So EVs as a percentage of vehicles on U.S. roads is around 10%, maybe just under that. I think that's going to continue to increase, but it's not going to be at the torrid pace that was originally predicted, say, 24 months ago. I think it's also work for the OEMs to do to get their supply chains in order to be able to create the manufacturing capacity for batteries, for instance, that really didn't exist in the U.S.
So on the manufacturing side, not just auto, but manufacturing in general, when do you expect a recovery? Because you have cut your full-year guidance on the back of the uncertainty that you see, within the environment. When do you expect a recovery?
We expect that the underlying demand will continue in a period of gradual sequential improvement through the rest of this year and into next year. This year was marked by a dynamic which we had not really seen as much before, and that was an overstock of material at our distribution and among the machine builders, because as the supply chain shortages began to ease, we found, and our supply chain found, that there had been over-ordering of products. And a lot of the dynamic this year that resulted in the guidance cut was due to material that was in the channel. And so even though the underlying demand from end customers remained strong, the channel had an overstock position for much of this year. So it's not
a demand issue as much as it is an inventory issue?
That's correct.
Okay. So, but outside, when do you expect this inventory issue to sort itself out and to be rebalanced?
We see the majority of that overstock inventory position to have decreased through this year. And so what we expect going forward is a period of gradual sequential growth. So each quarter being a little stronger demand than the one before it, continuing into next year.
What's the outlook as far as spending is concerned? Because, as far as tech companies go, it has been a challenging last few quarters. Discretionary spending has been, muted at this point in time. What's the sense that you get on tech spending?
So I think the tech companies are going to continue to innovate, because that's the lifeblood of tech companies, and I include Rockwell in that as well. So we continue to preserve investments for new innovation, for customer-facing resources, and I think a lot of our customers are doing the same thing as well.
Well, we are going to take a break here on the Global Dialogue and return with our conversation with the CEO of Rockwell Automation right after this. Welcome back. You're watching the Global Dialogue. I'm Shereen Bhan, and we're in conversation with the global CEO of Rockwell Automation. So capital allocation and capital prioritization at this point in time, what are you factoring in given the growth strategies that you're working on?
Well, first priority is for our internal usage of capital, and we're really more of an intellectual property company, so we don't have an enormous amount of capital demands for our ongoing operations. But we continue to make investments. The plant in Chennai is a good example of that. And we have other facilities, existing facilities, adding capacity to, making more efficient. Really, I think the next year or two is going to be marked by integrating all of the acquisitions that we've made, all of the new capabilities that we've developed to help simplify automation for our customers. So we've assembled a very broad portfolio of capabilities for production control and information management. Now the task is to integrate the parts.
You talked about efficiency, so let me address that for what's happening within Rockwell at this point in time. You have outlined a cost-saving plan that you are working towards. There's also been a restructuring as far as headcounts are concerned. You are cutting jobs at this point in time. Do you believe that that should be enough for now?
Based on our view of current business conditions, we're largely done with that part of the cost-cutting program. We'll, of course, see benefits from the actions already taken continue into next year. The focus now is on looking at other parts of our cost pool, what we pay for material, purchase services, manufacturing efficiency. So we're spending a lot of time on that, driving the inefficiency out of our processes that accumulated inevitably as a result of the volatility of the last few years, to be able to create a more efficient pure play organization.
You also talked about M&A and the acquisitions that you've done, and you're digesting them, so to speak, at this point in time. So, is that what you intend to consolidate on, or are there areas of opportunity that you continue to look at today?
We continue to have a pipeline that we review, but the focus now really is on integrating the pieces that we've already built and bought into a complete result, because what customers are looking for is easy to integrate solutions, and with the hardware and the software and the high-value services we have, we see knitting together those pieces as our top priority.
So what is looking exciting now, through 2024 and, of course, in 2025, in terms of opportunities, in terms of innovation, the new areas that you intend to go after?
Well, we've assembled an unmatched portfolio of cloud solutions for information management within manufacturing. And whether it's in the U.S. or it's in India or other places in the world, the key to competitive manufacturing is to be able to make the best use of the data that comes off of those basic processes. And our portfolio of software solutions, consulting resources is second to none. So I see a lot of opportunity across the verticals that we talked about earlier. In addition to that, one of our most recent acquisitions was with mobile robots. And so in the production process, you have a lot of fixed automation on the lines, doing sortation and things like that.
Right.
But being able to bring material to those lines and taking the finished product away to the loading dock or the warehouse is an area of huge opportunity for efficiency. And by adding mobile robots to our portfolio, we can integrate those pieces together into the whole as well.
You talked about mobile robots, and that brings me to the question that you're probably asked a lot as well, which is, what is all of this going to do as far as the future of jobs is concerned? And that is a challenge here in a country like ours. While the government is hoping to build out the manufacturing sector, but is it really going to be able to create the kind of jobs that one was used to and one expects? In an era of smart manufacturing, automation, mobile robots, I mean, what does the future of jobs look like?
Well, it does evolve. So the nature of work in manufacturing facilities does change. I like to think of the technology that we're providing as adding superpowers to a workforce which in many parts of the world is scarce. And so it's being able to provide the maximum productivity from scarce workers in these factories. They're going to have to be more comfortable interacting with the technology. And so workforce development is going to be very important. Augmented reality, all of the technology to help them make the most of the data that's available is a part of it. But being able to interact with the technology, regardless of the area of manufacturing you're in, is going to be absolutely essential. It's a trained and enabled and energized workforce working in concert with the technology, and that's really the winning hand.
Well, as you said, that would be necessary in economies and countries where people are a scarce commodity. That's quite the opposite here in India. So how do you see it playing out in India?
So in India, yes, the dynamic is different. You have such a young population and
a large young population.
A large, young, increasingly very well-educated, entrepreneurial population. What I see is it enabling India to take its place in global value chains by being able to couple the technology with that workforce to be so competitive, to be able to earn the position in value chains for manufacturing around the world. This week, we had some very exciting conversations with Indian manufacturers looking at ways that we can take their understanding of how to get to scale fast with our domain expertise and bringing that together.
So in India, when you talk about the opportunities, especially opportunities to help Indian companies scale, any sectors in specific that you're focused on?
I think you can go across multiple areas of manufacturing. In discrete manufacturing, it's areas like automotive, in semiconductor, warehouse automation, in manufacturing that has elements of process control as well, food and beverage, being able to provide more variety, more packaging formats in choice and food. Pharmaceuticals is an area of particular strength for us in the Indian economy. And then in energy, in process applications, energy transport, mining, all of these areas represent opportunities.
Well, speaking of opportunities, artificial intelligence in general, but Gen AI in specific,
yes.
What's the Rockwell bet on that, if one at all?
It's going to help simplify this whole business of automation, and I think that at the end of the day is really going to sort out the winners and the losers in this business. In the next couple of months, we're going to be introducing a Copilot for our newest programming tool, a cloud-native programming application, when with a Gen AI Copilot, it's going to allow people who don't necessarily have the years of experience with the very custom languages that have been used to program this equipment to be able to create programs that are going to make the business of configuring automation systems much simpler and much quicker.
So what does that do then to programming jobs, to coders? Because that's the other sort of dilemma that people are debating and discussing, that in a Gen AI world, what happens to the engineers?
It's going to take hours out of individual tasks, but it's going to allow those programmers to focus more on innovation and less on syntax. It's going to allow them to hone their skills in terms of making the right questions to be able to draw from libraries of pre-engineered code to bring that together. So I see it allowing their jobs to be much more efficient and for them to be more productive.
Are you on a Copilot yourself? I mean, how?
I do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Every day?
I think in some way I'm using a Copilot every day, and a lot of times I'll test, hypotheses about best opportunities for growth in certain areas and to see what the Copilot returns in terms of ideas about new business opportunities. So it's definitely at a higher level, but it's impacted my life as well.
What did it say the last time you checked?
When we looked at the best opportunities for generative AI, I'm not going to reveal too much about other things we're working on.
Because I imagine you're working on it.
Yeah, exactly right, and it's a good fit. I would say it's also still an area where working with partners is very important. And so we're working with some of the best in the business to make sure that we're focusing on the things that we can do uniquely well and working with partners who are best in class in their own right to create the fastest result.
So let me end then by asking you, Blake, we talked about volatility that the world is currently in the midst of, and that's nothing new. We've gotten used to that. The challenge today is that you've got geopolitical tensions, and that is an outcome that you have no control of. So
right.
What would you classify as your key risks, that you're most concerned about today?
No, I think it's creating resilient supply chains, and that's the same answer for us in our own operations as well as for our customers. And so looking at having manufacturing processes where we have dependable and, if possible, redundant sources of material, where we're close to the customer, Those are things that are important to us, and they're important for our customers as well. Cybersecurity resilience is certainly critically important given the rise of attacks against manufacturing and critical infrastructure. And so that resilience and finding ways to make that real for our customers and to give them the flexibility to be able to make the most of their existing investments, I see that's the #1 challenge.
Well, Blake, it's always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us here on the Global Dialogue. We hope you have a productive India visit, and we look forward to seeing you soon again back here and, of course, in Davos. But many thanks for your time today.
Looking forward to the next time. Thank you.
Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of the Global Dialogue. From all of us here on the team, for now, goodbye. Many thanks for watching. Stay tuned. The news will continue on CNBC-TV18.